Well, good morning. It's good to be back here. It's good to be with you. Today we're looking at Colossians, an interesting passage and an interesting letter. I'm going to start with a little bit of a caveat for that. For those who are interested in this, some will find interest in this and some will not. But Colossians is one of the letters where the authorship is a little bit disputed. It says, I was written by Paul. Paul, wrote this letter. But the language in the text doesn't seem like it probably was. And to us modern people, that seems very almost deceitful and dishonest and upsetting. But in the ancient times, that was very common. If you had a school of thought that you led, and then you were to pass away, someone would take on your mantle very literally and carry on your work for you. And that's what some scholars assume happened here. Because of the way that the message is kind of changed but brought into and it sounds like a new voice with the old themes. And that was really common in that time. And in fact, a lot of times people who would write to Paul would know, okay, this is Paul's passed on, but I'm going to write to the followers and say, what would Paul say about this? And the person would say back, well, Paul say this in response. That I give you is optional. Not all scholars agree, so if it's important to you that Paul wrote this letter, that is definitely, a lot of people believe that Paul did, but a lot of people don't. If it's important to you to, let me put it this way, I find comfort in that. Because there's parts in this letter that are in really great alignment with the other letters of Paul, and parts that seem like they just go off in the left field. And I think, like, what happened, Paul? Why'd you change your tune? But if you see that this might just be a follower of Paul kind of carrying on that message, then it makes a lot more sense. And you say, okay, now I can see what's going on. That in some sense we have kind of an extension of Paul's theology in a new way, which is helpful. And sometimes we see kind of a twist that seems not helpful. We can approach that with a grain of salt. For example, and why I'm mentioning this at all, you'll notice at the end of the passage when it says there's no longer the slave or the free, the Jew or the Gentile. Did you notice something was missing in that comparison that was in some of Paul's other letters when he does that exact same argument? Was there a division that was missing there? No, it wasn't in this list. Male or female wasn't in this list. In Paul's list, he includes that. He says there's no longer male and female. Because we're talking about societal differences. And we say we're going to break down these barriers that are between us and get away with us. In the church, that's not relevant. We're humans. We're just being humans together. We're going to break down those differences and come at this on an even playing field. And Paul includes male or female in that breakdown. This writer does not. And about 5-10 verses later is actually going to give us one of the real challenging verses, the kind of put women in your place verses. And you wonder, like, where'd that come from, Paul? Like, what happened? That helps me understand why suddenly there might be this change on this very central point. Okay, now I'm gonna leave that. I just give that to you in case it helps you, like it helps me come to terms with things where sometimes I see disagreements in the Bible and it confuses the heck out of me. That might be one reason why. But now let's talk about the message, because the message, there is still good in that message, even if you're suspicious about the authorship. When we see someone taking Paul's message to the next step, that can help us as we're trying to take Paul's message into our lives. We're trying to do the same thing. So this can help us. And in this message, the author is wrestling with a very interesting question. And that is, if God has saved me from sin, and I get the reward of heaven in spite of my past behavior, what's to stop me from just being a jerk? Why not just go through life being an absolute jerk and just being selfish and greedy? Because I know I will be forgiven anyway. So why not? It's an interesting question. And what is interesting in the answer is that neither Paul nor this writer, same or different, actually say that that's wrong. At no point did they say, nope, that salvation can be taken away from you. That's not what they're saying. They don't want to put into question the saving power of Christ. Christ can pull you right out of that too. They come at it from a different direction and they say, well, why would you want to? You were in this life that was troubled. You were going through life in a way that was deceitful, that was full of lies, and why would you want to go back for that? Wouldn't you rather now that you've put on the clothes of Christ and aligned yourself with Christ's life and Christ's mission, why would you want to act in a way counter to that? Wouldn't you rather be in alignment with that mission? Isn't that more honest and fulfilling within you as well to do that? And it gives two reasons why, kind of compacted into this message, that you might want to stay in alignment with our professed beliefs. And uses for that the analogy of clothes, which is an interesting analogy because it does two things. The clothes that we wear do something for us, and they say something about us to outsiders. And sometimes both at the same time. For example, if someone's wearing scrubs at work, and the workplace is a hospital, that provides a function for them. It's easy to clean, and it's comfortable, easy to move in and do their work. And it says something to us about that person. This person works here and does that job. Other uniforms do the same thing. Police officer's uniform might have a piece of protection, like a bulletproof vest, but also says something about the role that they provide. And on it goes. The clothing choices that we make then also says something about us. Look at what I'm wearing. So I have a suit that says something about that maybe I'm taking this seriously, and I have the stole, which says something that maybe somewhere someone decided that maybe I have some authority to say something today. And then I have completely the wrong shoes, which says something about how forgetful I am this morning, because I've been putting on my yard work shoes every day because the weather's been great. And on the way out the door, I just put on my yard work shoes and just come to church. So, and then I got here and went, I'm teaching about clothing today. Why am I wearing these shoes? Because sometimes I forget. So it says something about us, if we want to or not. Like the shoes thing says something about me that maybe I would rather it didn't say, but there it is, right? So whether we like it or not, it says something about us. So too does it when we put on the love of Christ around us. It does something for us, and it says something about us to the world around us. And that's what I think we're getting at when we use that clothing analogy. But there's a big difference about when this was written and now that makes that analogy a little interesting. So back when this was written, nearly everyone that you met who would say that they're a Christian converted into Christianity. And therefore, there was the life before and the life after. And a lot of times you'd say, well, here's this person, they're acting really different. They used to be a lie, a cheat, and a crook, and now they're honest and they're a decent human being. Like, what happened in that person's life that turned them around? And you would say, well, they're a Christian now. And you go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, those Christians they had a reputation for being honest and good people. I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's good for them. And so that conversation would happen a lot back when this was written. But in our modern context, especially say like 50 years ago, even more so, most of the people who are Christians were born into it. There's not a big difference. There's not really. I was born into it, so I don't have necessarily that same before and after. And what that means, when you can just assume, especially again 50 years ago, most people around you were Christian or had some faith going on there, some branch of Christianity. And that meant that when in your workplace, for example, that the person who helped you when you needed help was probably Christian. The person who brought lunch when you forgot it was probably Christian, shared theirs, right? And on and on. But it also meant that the person who stabbed you in the back to get that promotion over you probably went to church on Sunday morning. And the person who was deceitful and lied to you at work probably went to church. It shifted over time. There's been a shift over what we assume it means when someone's a Christian. We want it. Believe what we do because we're believers. We want that to imply for certain that means you're a good, honest, trustworthy person. But can you honestly tell me that you've never been cheated or taken advantage of from a Christian? Someone who professes Christianity? I can't. I've run into some people who say, I'm a Christian, and turn out to be terrible, rotten people. It's frustrating, isn't it? It goes back to what this is talking about. What happens when we live our life in alignment with our beliefs, our professed Christian beliefs, And it says something about us, but it also says something to the world when we do that. That we're taking this seriously, and that this Christianity is a thing that is good. But when there are people out there acting counter to their professed beliefs, it raises the flag of hypocrisy, right? And so we find ourselves in an interesting place today, where, especially if you talk to young people and you say, what does it mean to be Christian? Have you heard from a young person who says something like, well, it means you're judgmental, or it means that you're a hypocrite? Have you heard that? Not all will be brave enough to tell it to you in your face, but I've heard it. That's what it means. And I've talked to Christians, and I say, do you tell your friends that you're Christian? They say, absolutely not. I don't want them to know. Why? Well, because they'll think I'm judgmental or I'm a hypocrite. Yikes, we've missed that one. We've really messed that one up. But that's on us, because sometimes they're not wrong. It's those voices can be really loud. So I'm going to tell a little story, and I'm going to give us some positive news. Because I know a lot of times I point out a problem like this and say, what do I do about it? I don't know. Sorry, it's difficult. We'll figure it out together, I guess, I hope. But this one, I actually know what we can do about it. Because it is a problem, especially with young people, but I know what to do about it because it's right in this passage, what we can do about it. But I'm going to tell the story first. So back when I was going to university, I was taking the city bus. I was going to commuter school, so a lot of us did. And I was way out there. So by the end, I was just me and the bus driver going on to the last stop. And she was usually this great grandma, and we would just start talking, and she'd tell me stories about her huge family, and it made the drive a lot of fun. So every day we'd have these conversations. And one time I was talking to her, and she had gone to a big family wedding over the weekend. And she goes, oh, I got a good story for you. I'm like, all right, I'm ready for the tea. What's going on? And she says, well, so, there's this big family, and we got someone over here that's getting married, and they've been living together for a long time, but now they're getting married, and I'm sitting at a table with this branch of the family over here, and I'm sitting with, I think, like a 7-year-old, some young kid. And I was talking to the young child, and I said, what do you think? That was some wedding, wasn't it? Wasn't that gorgeous? What do you think about that wedding? And the 7-year-old looked at me, and he goes, well, I think it's about darn time, because they've been living in sin. and of course, she just like busts up laughing, and the parents just go like, oh my gosh. Because everyone knows where that idea came from, right? The 7-year-old didn't come across this theological understanding on their own. They've been talking around the dinner table is what happened. And someone looked at the kid and said, well, I'll share the family's hot take. Here we go. I know what that family wanted to teach to that young child about some sacredness around the concept of marriage in a secular world that maybe doesn't have as much value in it. Some understanding of the importance of that, or importance of relationship, or importance of family. I know what they were trying to teach. But what is it that the kid learned and is actually saying? If not, to get right up on that high horse any chance you get and start pointing fingers at the rest of the family because you got to figure it out and you're doing it right and they're doing it wrong. That is often what happens when we sometimes end up on that high horse. We do. And what this passage is trying to say, I think, about that is kind of the two things. One, live in alignment with our beliefs. Stay in alignment with our beliefs. And then that tail end, especially when it picks up the refrain, there's neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free in the body of Christ, is literally saying, so get off your high horses, thinking that you've got it better than someone else, because that's exactly what's happening in the church. People who came at it from Judaism, because Christ was Jewish, say like, we got a leg up on this over you who are coming at as Gentiles. And then the people who have privilege and wealth said, we've got wealth and you're a servant, so we're more important than you. And they tried to bring that status into the church. And that's why this letter says, not here you don't. That's not what it's about here. Get off your high horses, right? And treat each other with love. You're clothing us in the love of Christ. We need to lead with love. Even when we think we all got it figured out, we got something to say, we need to lead with love every time. So the answer of what do we do about it? Well, lead with love. Live into the love of Christ that Christ has wrapped around us, and lead with love. And it works. I will also say that it works. Maybe not so rapidly and fast but it works. Because in those same conversations that I've had sometimes with young people where they say, what does it mean to be a Christian? Like, well, it means you're judgmental, or it means you're a hypocrite. When I push a little bit and ask, I'm like, all the Christians you met are that way? Or some of them? Or like, where'd that come from? Well, they have plenty of places to point fingers. Their hurt comes from somewhere. But a lot of times then they'll come around and say, but you're right. I mean, my uncle's a Christian, and he's an absolute sweetheart. He's a gem of a human being. And my grandma, she's a Christian. She really came in and helped us out. Like, she lives into it. She walks the walk. And that means a lot. The times when we live into it do, I think, matter. Within our spheres of influence and the people that we're engaged with in our life, people through our work life or through our family life, they do notice when we're wrapped in the love of Christ. And it's hard to break through the noise of our culture, I know. But believe me, when we make the effort to lead with love, it does get recognized. So that's what we can do about it. We can just make sure that we are living as honestly and as truthfully as we can into the love of Christ. So this is an encouragement message, because I know you are doing that. This isn't a do better message. This is you're doing the right thing message. You here are showing each other, and I see it all the time, what it means to be living in the love of Christ. That's the right thing to do. Keep at it. The world needs that message more than ever. We're going to sing a great song, one in the Spirit.